Thank you for whoever makes it to this one. I know this is an unusual time for me to have a live stream. If you are watching this live, and I think there are a couple of people here, if you are watching this live, please put something in the chat box. Tell me that you can hear me. I have to apologize in advance. The way I'm set up here at my desk is the camera is here, but the screen is here. So if I am not making eye contact with you, that's because I'm looking at something on the screen. I'll try to remember to turn my head and take a look. The idea today is to more or less wrap up with my basic recollections of all the different optics I saw at SHOT Show. I got back about a day ago, day and a half. And on Tuesday, I have to get in the plane again. So my time is relatively limited, and I wanted to kind of go over my notes, look at the pictures, and have a good number of notes. Look at the pictures and tell you what I saw and what I thought. I'll obviously take questions. I still owe you a live stream to discuss the Narelle Hunter match I shot during the weekend of SHOT Show. I don't know if it's worth the entire live stream, but it might be worthwhile. I will attempt to do that. I will attempt to do that tomorrow night. Excellent. So YouTube and locals can hear me. Mr. Alpine is here. Good to see you again. And Boom Country Hydrographics. So hopefully next year, once again, every year I try to tell you at least a couple of places at SHOT Show where I plan to spend some amount of time, and it's always great to be able to catch up with people. So a couple of people at SHOT who I haven't seen in a while. At an Earl Hunter match, one of the subscribers from locals was there also shooting his first match, which I thought was an absolute blast. So the Rumble Studio that I use for live streaming all of a sudden can no longer cast to Facebook, which is very annoying. It is some sort of a bug, I assume. They say they're working on it. So what I want to do, I'm going to grab a link. I'm gonna grab a link of that and post it on my Facebook page so that if you want to watch it, at least they can watch it through Rumble. So give me a moment to do so, and that gives people a chance to join the stream. I'm seeing some increase in the numbers, and once I do that, we're gonna get started. Is there a particular brand you guys would like me to start with? Unfortunately, I didn't do much, if any, of general sightseeing, looking at different guns and all that. But I did look at most optics, not all. I'm not even going to try to get them all. Hold on. Just basically, basically gave up on that. I'll do what I can. Can do what I can, and there we go. Mr. Benjamin Belkin is here. Thanks, sir. Thank you for being here. What was I? Yeah. So, any particular brand you want me to start with? There will be some overlap with some of the stuff I've talked about before, but I'll try to keep the overlap minimal. Mr. Remmers and Twenger is here. So, for once, I started this early enough for somebody in the UK to actually be awake. I don't usually do this on Sunday, but on Tuesday I get to get on the plane again, so my time is limited. Oh, I ran these coffee tumblers with RTIC. One side has my logo on it, and the other side says "Making Sense of the Nonsense" since 1991. That's the year I came to America. I'm considering doing another run. They're costing me about $25 each. Other go if anybody's interested in these. Mention it in the chat box. If there's interest, I'll order another batch. Trigicon Ascent. I went to look at Trigicon Ascent, and I did not see anything radically new. They're basically It's a good way of saying this. Basically rebranding shit. They were not interesting. Digital website is down. That's nice. They were not new designs from what I was able to see. I wonder if they're blocking it from the computer, or do I have VPN running or something? I have VPN running. That's why it's blocking it. Okay, let's disconnect that. Look like all the relabeled versions of the same stuff as they had before. Some couple of variations, couple of additional configurations, but I did not see anything that qualified as especially new at the Trigicon booth. There you go. And I want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything, so I want to see what they have. Yeah, the no, it's the same scopes with new labels and slightly different reticles. So Trigicon is trying to do a little bit more hunting stuff. So Ascent is the product they aiming for hunting. Their second focal plane scopes. I think the 2 LPVOs are new, 16124, which is the same designs they've had, just different reticles. And I think the I think 124 was not illuminated, or 126 is also not illuminated. So it's a not non-illuminated low power variables, which forgive me if I don't get super excited. And I think they had a new 4 to 16, or is it? Yeah, I think it was 4 to 16. So they're going to be relatively affordable, but honestly, yeah, 4 to 16 also not illuminated. And I thought it was a surprisingly thin reticle for Trigicon. So I don't know. Mr. Beardo, yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry we didn't cross paths. You still owe me some pictures. I'm going to send you a link where to upload the pictures. Benjamin, 1 to 6 and 4 to 16 were featured. Okay, yeah. Stand targets for the mug, not the Trigicons. Okay. All right. Okay. So Mr. Stand targets wants a mug. Let me start taking notes. If anybody else wants a mug, tell me and I'll order a batch. Again, I'm not looking to make money on the mugs. I'll charge you exactly what they cost me. Let's see. Mr. Beardo. Yeah, Meopta. So Meopta, I talked about Meopta during part 1. They were trying to they're trying to revamp their line. They have the ability to make nice stuff. It's not clear to me if they understand the US market well enough, but they definitely have the ability. They want to move forward with some checkmate stuff, European made stuff, and some OEM stuff. Their 315 hunting scope was OEM'd. They are doing away with Optica name, and they're making them. Where's my notes? They are making them. Lots of pages of notes. All right, that's not Opta. That's tracked. Schmidt, Bushnell, the stuff I've talked about already. Oh, there's the some Opta, yeah. Yeah, so they're going to call them Mio Pro R6 and Mio Hunter. So the 315 was a Mio Hunter R5. Those are perfectly reasonable scope. The big question is that what will Miopta be able to do that is reasonable? And I honestly don't know what it's going to be. I am cautiously hopeful that they will not screw it up, but it's a tough sell. Honestly, for now, it's a tough sell. Now, they were talking about working with me on some reticle designs, etc. Given my card, I'll be happy to help them. If the opportunity arises, I wish them well. It's a pretty iconic name in many ways. But what they're actually able to do is an open question. Mr. Remmers the Trangers is wondering about Element Optics. So Element didn't have a booth, but I met with one of the guys from Element. I know them quite well. I've done some consulting for them in the past. They have there was nothing new announced for short time, but they just announced a new 2 to 12 SLX scope with the fiber illuminated reticle, which should be quite nice, I think, in the short term. It's an Optics Planet exclusive, but they're going to open it up to other dealers shortly. They have several new designs coming up that they're working on, but I don't think they are at a stage where I can talk about them, at least not just yet. As we get closer, if they let me, I will take a look. Benjamin looking, did Vortex do anything new? Can't remember. So Vortex also was not exhibiting its shot, and I don't believe they have any new introductions. They introduced some new pack, whatever they call it, for like binocular carriers and stuff. It's actually pretty nice. They've got Vortex has some things in development that I think will be announced more or less mid-year. Vortex changed how they announce products, so they no longer announce products and say, okay, deliver in 6 months. They basically only announce stuff that's essentially in stock and stuff to some degree. They no longer do these forward-looking announcements, and they're not timing anything to SHOT Show. What my Meopta had a very 3 to 12 by 50 that got me excited for the future of Meopta, but they didn't run with that concept. Are you talking about the Meotac, the tactical scope with very tall turrets? If that is the one you're referring to, so they had a Meotac sort of scope there that was a high magnification model, front focal plane, but again, very European military type design. 6 to 36 by 56. But field of view was relatively narrow. Reticle was very Euro turret, seemed pretty good. It would need to be massaged for the US market, I'll be honest with you. Again, it just comes down to whether Meopta is going to be capable of playing in the US market. They have the capability to make products. Whether they will accept that they need to follow the market or not is a big question. The guy I talked to who is in charge of the whole product line, he's clearly a smart guy, clearly understands the Euro part of the shooting world, may or may not understand the US one. It's very hard to say. He knows what he's doing, but US market is different. I'm hopeful, but we'll see. With Alpine, yes. Yeah. So the 312 by 50 was a nice scope, but it's very hard to sell that. It's very hard. Yeah, it's very hard to sell that in the US market, unfortunately. Beardo, right in the rain, has a partnership making a neat Velcro panel armband with a dope card you can stick on. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. But that's more of a discussion where we'll talk about Neural Hunter hopefully tomorrow evening. All right. Let's see. So what would be a good start? One of the companies I have not talked about yet was Leica. And as you guys know, I generally enjoy Leica optics. I have a Leica camera and I use Leica a lot of binoculars. Leica did not exhibit at the show, but they did they do this yearly thing they call the media breakfast, where you go to a different place. In this case, it was at the Wynn Hotel, 7:30 in the morning, and they pump you with coffee and a pretty decent breakfast and tell you what they're up to. So I went to that. Ran into my friend Rick Bin there. Rick Bin owns a 24-hour Campfire forum. I like Rick. He's a good dude and good friend. So it was always, and sitting next to him is always entertaining. His commentary is always interesting. Leica has a new leadership in the United States, and they seem to want to do things better. There are things coming, most of them toward the second half of the year. They've got a new spotting scope coming up, the APO Televid, which promises to be very nice. It's a much needed upgrade for Leica with a couple of very, very nice eyepieces, wide field of view 25 to 50 and more standard field of view 20 to 60. There will be the APO televid, which is the top end, and something that's a little bit less expensive, televid HD. I have not seen them, so I don't have any opinions. But with the APO televid, they're flat out saying they're going for the best image quality on the market. There'll be a couple of models, I think 65 millimeter objective and 85. I do not know if they'll be making any reticle eyepieces or not. That has not come up. I assume in the beginning not. But one of the things about Leica this time around looked to me that they were persuadable. They were okay looking at the market and adjusting, which is a nice change, honestly. Let's see. No, I've got. I'm just looking through where this channel is going and making sure. Okay, so I have a so how guys are locals. I see a couple of people. One of the things to keep in mind is that if you make a comment rather than put something in a chat box, I don't get a pop-up, right? So if you put something in a chat box, I see it immediately. If you make a comment under a post, I will not see it until after I'm done with this. Benjamin, welcome. What stood out for you as the stars of the show? Good question. Several things, and I'll mention them, and we can go into the details. Psionics had a fused clip-on that fused thermal with their low light day slash digital night vision camera, and the fusion was done very well. It's called the Spectra. That I thought was very impressive. I really liked the front focal plane Schmidt and Benta 318 by 42. I think it will be a very impressive crossover scope. Burris's, I'll talk about Burris in a little bit. I talked about a little bit, and I need to talk about it more. Their new XTR PS, I think that's the overall direction where rifle scopes should be moving. I'll discuss that in a minute. Despite my better judgment, I went and visited D&T Optics, and some of their stuff was extremely impressive. And I had a long conversation with one of the owners of the company to understand the Arkin connection, all that sort of stuff. I am not gonna, bring out any of the dirty laundry, but I think D&T is going to be a very different beast, and I am cautiously optimistic. They think they're going to be I think they're going to be a real deal. The 7035 look good. No, it's not a tangent data for $600, but for $600, it looked to be an extremely. It just was it looked like a very mature product. And what really shocked my pants off was their, figuratively, not literally. I was, this crowd always have to be specific. Is the Thermite product line? It's basically all these integrated devices are called the multispectral scopes. And I am going to see if I can. There you go. There's Thermite. There are several products there. TNC 635R, that you can get for, I think, under $3,000. It's a pretty decent thermal, and combined with a kind of a day sort of a low light night vision scope with an illuminator with a laser rangefinder. And I was surprised. So 35 millimeter lens, 640 by 512 thermal resolution. You could do picture in picture. The user interface kind of made sense. The eyepiece was extremely well done. So I'm looking at that going like, I don't know who's doing the hardware for them, but they know what they're doing. I was surprised. Yes, it's Chinese and all that, but I was, I was surprised. I mean, in many ways, what I saw at D&T was one of the things that stood out at the show. And honestly, for me personally, so Telson Optics, this new Canadian company, They had their coming out party at SHOT Show, and it's been a long time coming, so I really wanted to see that. Uh, and the scopes, like, it's the first time I see production scopes, and they're looking good. Like the 318 is good, 5 to 32. These two are Japanese, are looking very good. The couple of Chinese scopes actually look quite nice. I thought that, yeah, that was quite nice. So that's probably what stood out to me the most. Another thing, I talked about that a little bit in the part one. So there is this new Taiwanese OEM that had scopes by Meprolite and Leapers Integrix, and the maturity of the optical design impressed me. So let's see, Mr. Winston Neuro. Did Tangent Data have a new reticle option? I did not see new reticles at Tangent. When I asked them what's new, the new part was the Psi 10, the tiny 1 to 10 by 24, which I liked. I think it should do well for them, but I'm gonna get my hands on it and test it out. I rather liked it. Again, it is the most compact front focal plane 1 to 10 scope on the market today, which is impressive. But I didn't see anything new on the Tangent side, at least that I'm aware of. Mr. Jeff B is there. Good evening to you too. Let's see what else. Northman, have you taken a look at the new Athlon Chrono? Anyway, I bought a Garmin Zero. Still can't use it since it's too cold up here. I thought Athlon had a bunch of new stuff. We can talk about that a little bit. That's on my agenda. And I looked at the Chrono. It looked pretty nice, and I really like the price. So I expect to be testing the Chrono once they have production models available. Beardo is pointing out that one guy made a 5-barrel 338 Norma minigun. Yeah, that would be interesting. But yeah, if you want to see some freaky guns, there's always something interesting happening at SHOT Show, that's for sure. But anyhow, going back to Leica. So Leica is kind of changing the way they interact with media. They seem like they want to be a big player. They're making all the right moves. They are bringing new products. They are showing signs of listening to the market, which has always been kind of the downfall of these iconic European brands. They are used to playing in Europe, where they can just more or less tell people what to do, and in America it doesn't work. You have to follow the market. So Leica is looking for a good fusion of where they can apply the expertise yet still be respectful of the marketplace, and I am seeing some nice improvements there. So I've mentioned the new spotting scopes, again 65 and 82 millimeter objectives. The photo is going to be directed to ARCA, which is kind of an obvious thing that few companies do. They'll have some digiscoping options, stuff like that. They'll look at it from a system level standpoint. They'll be bringing in some Fortis rifle scopes. They will have a glossy one that they're doing together with Rigby, and then we'll have the Fortis matte, which is going to be more of a traditional-ish, more standard second focal plane line of hunting scopes for United States. In the brief look I had at the Fortis, it basically a long time ago, it looked to be very good. I don't have a ton of experience with it, so at some point I need to do a proper hunting scope comparison, and I'll get my hands on one and take a look. One of the really interesting parts that they talked about was that they are going to have a new Rangemaster CRF Max laser rangefinder coming out this year, and they are going to listen to the market. They'll change how they present information. It's going to be more. They'll have a much higher resolution, high quality display, and they'll be able to put a lot of information on one screen rather than cycling through screen the way they do on the current models. It's something called Matrix LED display. They will be able to give you a lot of information, and you also have a disturbed reticle, so you can adjust the reticle to make sure it lines up to where the laser is going, which is kind of a nice thing. And I'm assuming that capability will be propagated through their product line. That's going to come with AB Elite on board, and their partnership with Applied Ballistics is continuing, which I'm rather happy to see. And naturally, there'll be a more entry level laser rangefinder as well. The Colornox 2 thermals, the monocular and the clip-on, are finally going to make it here. I couldn't quite figure out if they're going to have a Picatinny adapter or not, but at first it's going to come with a Rusan adapter to put it on the barrel of a rifle scope. If it comes without a Picatinny adapter, that's a mistake. But we'll see. We'll see what it looks like. I am going to talk to Leica guys and see how it's going to work. They will have an option of an integrated laser rangefinder for their thermals, which is a nice thing. Let's see. M+6 is going to get some new reticles. Hold on a second, gentlemen. There's something happening here that I'm not happy about. Hold on. Okay. There we go. That's done. It was a M+6 is getting a couple new reticles. I'm sure they'll be redesigning their front focal plane scopes as well. That's probably a little further out. I offered to help them with the reticle designs. We'll see if they take me up on that or not. Historically, Germans were kind of um, particular about it. We'll see. We'll see if they want to play. They'll be doing a big push on the software integration, so they want it to be more streamlined. The guy from Basemap was there. I'm not terribly familiar with that software package. I use Onyx and Go Hunt, but they'll have integration with Onyx, Basemap, and something else. I don't remember what it was. For me, the big things are, the improved optics, going back at the front focal plane rifle scopes, and different way of presenting information for the laser rangefinder products. I think that's going to go a long way to optically, their stuff is just superb. So I'm kind of happy to see that. Okay. All right. Before I move on from Leica, let's see what I got in the comments. Mr. Alpine, if you talk to Tangent Data, please encourage them to bring new reticles to market. The reticle is the only reason I don't own one. So the question to you then, what sort of reticle do you like? What would you like to have in a tangent scope that they do not currently offer? All right. I use tangents. I mostly use Gen 3 XR. It works just fine for me. I think it's a good reticle. But I've played a little bit with JTAC. Also seems like a nice reticle. So what would you like in a tangent reticle? Mr. Jeff B, 1961. Your thoughts on a 10-mile 3 to 18 FFP mill? Deer hunting in Appalachian Mountains, some woods, some 400-ish yard fields, and some valleys. So I've tested that. I have a video out somewhere. I've tested that scope a while back, and I generally liked it. It's a nice general purpose design. I think the reticle is a little thin on 3 power for what you're looking to do, but it's reasonable. If you are getting out into 400-ish range, it's probably not a bad scope at all. But like with most designs like this, one of the problems with them, the companies who make these scopes tend to use the same basic reticle dimensions in their mid-range, mid-power scopes as they're doing the high-power ones. And that usually doesn't work in 3 to 18. Okay. Where was it? Yeah. They put the same reticle dimension 3 to 18 as they put in a 5 to 25 or 6 to 36. Tangent, for example, is actually guilty of that. I gave him an earful about it at the show. But yeah, aside from that, I like the 10-mile a good bit. It was very long, but it's short of that. It actually worked very nicely. Rammers and twangers, the reticle in the Element 5 to 30 that you designed is awesome. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. The Element 5 to 30 for me was a very interesting and a very enjoyable exercise because I was not super happy with most reticles in existing prismatic scopes. And when I had a chance to work a little bit with Element, that was my opportunity to really think through what kind of reticle design I'd want in a high quality 5-power scope. So that's what came out, and overall, the people seem to like it. I'm sure some don't. You can't please everyone, but by and large, I think that reticle worked out fairly well. Mr. Alpine, I like a 0.2 subtension where it's obvious where 0.5 mils is. Are you talking about the tree reticle or the tree reticle or a mil hash reticle? Because I thought in the JTAG they actually did a pretty good job of isolating where the 0.5s are. In the Gen 3 XR, it's not as obvious. I got used to it, over the years. I have so much mileage with it. But I thought that JTAG, I'm pulling it up. I thought that JTAG, that was one of the things they wanted. They did it. Or did you want it in a tree reticle? Let's see. There you go. There's the JTAG. It's actually a good point. JTAG, they didn't do that either. Yeah, you're right. I'll float the idea by them and see and let them do some sort of marketing study. Should have a couple of reticles I can send them as examples that I've been sketching up. Okay. JTAG is their best, but I prefer the designs. Prefer to have a tree if possible. So for Mr. Alpine, what is your current favorite reticle available in the market? I assume for a relatively high magnification score, 5 to 25 or 7 to 30, or 7 to 35. What is the reticle you like the most? That's actually an interesting exercise. Mr. Benjamin Bilkin, what do you recommend for an AR scope in front focal plane, 2.5 to 4 on the low end, 12 to 20 on the high, 50 millimeter max objective, and under 26 ounces? How much are you willing to pay, right? It kind of comes down to money in the end. So tell me the budget and I'll come up with some recommendations for you. Let's see. Mr. Fushnikin, excited for a review of the Sai 1 to 10, one of the only reviewers I trust. Well, I appreciate that. The Sai 1 to 10, I talked about it in the past live stream, but it looks very promising. It is very tiny. It looked to be optically well optimized. It's not day bright illumination. They're doing the X-wing structure in the reticle, which I generally like. It's not as good as nuclear bright illumination, but it's pretty good. And the sacrifice for keeping it very, very small is the relative. It's not narrow, but kind of mid pack field of view, 20-degree apparent field of view. That's the sacrifice. How well it'll work in the end is very hard to say, but it's a nice compact 1 to 10, so I'm kind of curious. Mr. Benjamin Belkin, budget is 2,500. From Alpine, the number 16 from Zeiss is my current favorite. It's perfect in the S5 and a little thick for the 6 to 36. I like the dotted 1.5 mils as it helps me with movers. So, okay, that would kind of make sense that you like it. Yeah, so Zeiss S5 has a mil NMOA reticle. I am going to assume you mean the mil reticle. Spent quite a lot of time with it. Actually, no, you talk about 636. So yeah, I think you're talking. Yeah, let's see. Okay, there's that reticle. Yeah, I remember that one. Okay. Yeah, it's a good reticle. I like the Zeiss reticle. I know a lot of people think it's a little busy in the center, but I didn't have that impression. I thought it worked quite well. I didn't like the number every full milliread, I prefer to space them out by 2, but opinions vary. Overall, yeah, that's a nice modern reticle. I see what you mean about the dot and 1.5 and all that. So it's not a tangent for Mr. Alpine. it's not a tangent, but the reticle might appeal to you. Take a look at the reticles we developed for Telson Optics. So I didn't develop them solo. I more or less had this whole iterative process for them where we were having discussion. They were doing the sketches and I was providing commentary. Their 5 to 32 by 56 scope. So it's a Japanese-made scope. It's not an alpha scope, but it is very nice. It's about $2,000, 2,100, something like that. And the reticle is called FAR2, FAR2. Please take a look when you have a chance and tell me what you think. So one of the things I did, I might as well talk about Telson. Now, one of the things I did with Telson is that I spent a little time there on Thursday morning, and they wanted me to kind of do an overview of how the reticle design came about. So we set up a couple of cameras and a TV screen, and I went over the thought process that went into the reticles and why they worked out the way they did. And the video should be edited this week. They'll be posting it, and I'll post it, of course, on my channel once they're done with the editing with proper references and all that. Let me know what you think. I'm quite curious. I have a few other reticle designs that I've been considering shopping around, and maybe I should see if the tangent guys are interested in another option. We'll see how it goes. Mr. Fushnik, and I think the MSR2 reticle is an interesting concept. You're not the clock dialing seems to be more consistent. Even on the clock, most people right now shooting precision guns are either dialing everything or dialing elevation and holding wind. The PRS guy, well, that's for Hunter. For PRS guys, actually pre-dialing wind, then making small adjustments from there. So holding with the reticle is more common with gas guns, where you need to have relatively quick transitions, etc. The plates are bigger. For the comparatively small plates in bolt gun competitions, I think dialing, there's been a big pushback toward dialing. That's why most of the top guys are not using 3 reticles. They're mostly using mil-hash reticles to keep the field relatively open. I use 3 reticles. I haven't had any issues, but I'm not a top shooter, so I don't know if you want to listen to me on that one. Jeff, I almost forgot. Do you think the Miopt Opticus 6 318 by 50 can handle a smokeless muzzleloader? Muzzleloader, I believe you designed that reticle. Yeah, the MRAD one is my design. I would imagine it can handle a muzzleloader. I have not tested it on one, but I would imagine you shouldn't have any real issues. Okay. So going back to Telson. So Telson had their coming out party. They are planning a fairly complete optics line. For now, there are 4 scopes, 2.5 to 15 by 44 second focal plane, 5 to 25 by 56 front focal plane. Those are made in China, some of the better Chinese scopes out there. And they have a 3 to 18 by 50 and 5 to 32 by 56 that are made in Japan. I actually have the 3 to 18 here somewhere. If you guys give me a moment, I'll go grab it. I should have had it, but I think I prepared it and left it on a different table. Give me one moment, I'll bring it back here. Found it. So the 3 to 18 is in the 30-ish ounce range, I think. It will come with all sorts of gears, accessories, and all that sort of stuff. Illuminated reticle, 10 mil radian per turn turret with turn indicator. Little knob, I don't know how well you can see it here. You can see it a little bit. I kind of liked it, so I figured I'm gonna This will be the first Telson scopes I do a proper review on. I would have probably preferred it with a locking windage turret, but it doesn't look like it's going to shift on many times soon. So here's what the scopes look like. So I'm cautiously optimistic about Telson. They're good guys. They're trying to do the right thing. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. The scopes are looking good. They have a new tripod, OEM tripod, but I actually liked it quite a lot. And they've got some other stuff, binoculars, and a few other things in the plan. So Benjamin Belkin. So for Benjamin Belkin, under 2500 for an A precision AR scope, under 26 ounces, your options are very slim. The closest you're gonna get is Vortex Razor HDLHT, 4.5 to 22 by 50. It's not 4 parts, 4.5 on the low end, but that's the best you're gonna find if you want front focal plane in that weight range. Right around 26, you have scopes like Mark 5, 313 by 42. That's pretty good. Leopold Mark 4, 4.5 to 18. Again, 4.5 on the low end. That works quite well. I have one and I like it quite a lot. I like the Mark 4 HD scopes. But going up to 2500 does not yield you all that much. Most of the scopes that start going into this 2000 2500 low price range are not going to be light enough for your cutoff. The best bang for the buck, and let me see if I can find it. I think Euro Optic still had some of the closeout March 4.5 to 28 by 56 scopes. And they're closeout because March changed the turrets. I had a few with the old turret, which is a nice turret, just not as nice as the new one. And I'm looking, if that is still available, that was right around 2500, and that absolutely kicked ass. That's unfortunately is non-eliminated. There you go. So it's not quite 2500, but not quite 4x. It's a 4.5 accurate AR-15. This I'm gonna put a link, would probably be at the top of my list. It's about 2700, not quite 2500. But for what this scope offers, this is a very good price. I'll put that in the chat box. There we go. Should be going out to everyone. MR25. Have you gotten your hands on a Bushnell Match Pro in 3 to 18? So I have not tested it. I saw it at SHOT Show. With the brief look I had at SHOT, it looked perfectly reasonable. How it really holds up is hard to say. Bushnell is sort of rebuilding the brand, making a little more sense out of it. It's on my list. If I can, I will take a look at it, but I don't have anything definitive to say because I only saw it briefly at SHOT Show. Mr. Alpine, the far two reticle looks no better than JTAC. The subtensions on the bottom of the main crosshair are excessive for me, and I'd prefer it was the same as in the vertical study, similar to BR7C. I would also like a dot above and below, or in the middle, like the Zeiss reticle at 1.5 mils for movers. Well, good comments. Where was I? Okay. All right, let's see what brand should we touch on next. You know what? Let's go into the thermal world for a moment. So Envision had a new clip-on they were showing, a 50mm lens, 640 by 480. Looked to have very nice screen, like serious upgrade over the previous screens. And it was nicely compact. Weirdly, with very large battery compartment because there's quite a lot of processing power. It has very interesting image processing. So as you dial up to more magnification, it's giving you surprisingly good image before pixelation kills you. And the image quality was quite impressive. That having been said, it's going to be expensive, and I'm not entirely sure when it's going to come out. I'm guessing Q2, not Q2, like second half of this year. They are kind of getting spooled up on doing this in production, but I've seen some prototypes in the past, and I think this is it's not going to be cheap, but Envision does very, very good stuff. So I am very cautiously optimistic about how nice that thing's going to be. We'll see. It runs, what was it? Yeah, it runs on two 18650 batteries. You know what? I should pull up some pictures and show you guys what all this stuff looks like. Pictures worth 1,000 words, right? Say yes. Yes, no, maybe. We'll go with the yes. There we go. So let me see. There we go. So that's Envision. They had a very interesting trick, which I don't think anybody else does with clip-ons. Let me see if this works. Can you guys see it? There we go. So they're doing this very interesting trick, and you see a couple of extra. So there is normal cluster of 4 buttons. I'm not a huge fan of it, but the way Envision does it is not bad. It's reasonably tactile. You see there are some buttons on the other side. I think I have a better picture of it. There we go. This is a slightly better picture. You see there are a couple of those little buttons to the left of the main cluster. What they are for positioning the menu in the screen. So the way it works with clip-ons, if you increase the magnification of the day scope that's behind the clip-on, you are beginning to look at the center portion of the screen. And as you do that, the menu options, etc., are usually somewhere off to the periphery. And as you zoom in, if you need to do anything in the menu, and sometimes you do, you cannot see them anymore. So those little buttons on the left of the main button cluster are designed for not only moving a little bit the location of the menu button, various menu options, but also it rescales them for the magnification. So they, if you make them look correct on high magnification of a day scope, they will be too small on low power and so on. So they developed the IP to move those around and rescale them in accordance with what the magnification of the day scope is. I thought it was a nice touch, I'll be honest with you. Other than that, I don't think Envision had anything especially new. Like some of this looks a little funny. There's this huge battery compartment, a very, very compact clip-on. So I wonder if there's a way to package it in a cleaner manner. I don't know. Something to think about. But I was pretty impressed with how they pulled it off, and I hope they bring it back to the market sooner than later. Let's see what the after Envision. Let's stop by XS Sites. Again, not an optics company, but very sweet people. I rather like them, and their iron sights and different rails, etc. The way they make them are just always excellent. Never had any issues. I use their offset iron sights on my ARs, and I've used quite a few of their irons on handguns and stuff. I think they have a thing going there. So they got a couple of new things. They have these R3D sights now available for a bunch of other guns, and there's a very, very visible bright front dot. Yeah, these are not match sights, but if you need to go fast and questionable light with irons, that's probably the better way to go. Including, and they now have them available for a bunch of smaller handguns, including the Schmidt S&W Bodyguard. Apparently, it's a popular handgun since it's doing really well for them. I found it very marginally shootable personally, but hey, who am I to judge? What I found more interesting is that I used the array rails and stuff for lever guns. And now they are going to do an M-lock handguard for lever guns for Marlins and Henrys and I think a couple others. And they're not the only company beginning to do it. There are several. But thought um, I thought they did a pretty good job with this one. Everything was nicely dehorned. Everything looked good. The dimension, everything was fine. I didn't cut my hand on anything, which is already an improvement. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. So here to go. Somebody had convertible pistol irons that pivot up for suppressor height. I haven't seen that. Interesting idea. Don't know if it will work well in a reciprocating slide, but the idea is interesting. Okay. There was and the last thing from the access sights, and this is for the traditional revolver guys. They have a revolver front sight with a very highly polished brass bead, which is a surprisingly nicely visible front sight. Go figure. Something I saw just running by, this company called O-Sight, I think. They have these small red dot sights that is rechargeable, doesn't have a removable battery, it's just rechargeable via this thing you put on top. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, there we go. So going back to access sights, so this is what the M-lock handguard looks like. And this is the bodyguard with a very, very bright front sight. The way they do this R3D front sight is tritium in the center and a fluorescent donut around it. So if it's charged up with some ambient illumination, it is impressively bright. And they're also experimenting with some panels for the M-lock, some wooden ones there on the bottom, and some others to kind of make it look less obnoxiously tactical. But honestly, I don't mind the look. And I like the ability to add accessories, and M-lock makes it pretty straightforward. That's a polished brass bead from Exercise for Revolvers. Time, but it's impressive how visible it is. So this is this O-sight thing. So it's an enclosed compact red dot sight. I think it's an RMSC footprint. And what you see on top is this pad for recharging it. And the charging module with just clips on top. Here's the thing with the charging module on top. You can recharge it up to 5 times. It's kind of an interesting idea. It's not a bad idea. I'm just trying to figure out in what ways it's superior to just having a normal battery that you have to change every year or two. So it's not entirely clear to me why I'd want to go through this whole complication and have an extra charging accessory. This site itself will seem to work just fine, but I kind of don't get the idea. I guess you can make it more sealed this way. Maybe that's it. Maybe the environmental sealing is the advantage. Hard to say. The guy I talked to couldn't articulate anything other than he thought it was a very cool idea. Afterwards, I stopped by Gideon Optics and Benjamin Belkin. O-Sight is made by Olight, I believe. I believe so, yes. There's nothing wrong with this idea. I'm just trying to figure out what problem they're looking to solve. So then I went to Gideon Optics. Unfortunately, I didn't have a ton of time there, but with Gideon, Mike Branson, who is kind of in charge there, is it's generally a good dude and a good friend. So because of that, when they have something new, A, he'll tell me, B, I can relatively comfortably get him to come on to one of the live streams and show about it. He's visited with me a couple times in the past. What stood out there was this Valor Mini red dot sight, compact enclosed red dot sight, again with RMS footprint and nicely compact, enclosed, good collimation quality. I thought it was a nice looking sight, and it's going to be inexpensive. So I'm probably gonna get my hands on one and do some testing. Again, good dude, smart guy, and the way the Gideon Optics has been developing out of nowhere is quite impressive. I think he's got a bright future with that brand. Let's see what else we got here. That's more Gideon. This is Telson Optics, so that's the lineup of several scopes there. They've got mounts, rings, all sorts of accessories. Honestly, I didn't look at it hugely carefully. I was interested in optics and I liked what I saw. Here's the 5 to 32 by 56 from Telson. And from Telson, I went to DNT Optical, or just DNT. I'm not sure if it's DNT Optical or not. This is a scope they call the One, the 7 to 35 by 56. Well, I can switch from the presentation mode. So DNT for me, one of the more surprising visits I had during the SHOT Show, because I've basically thoroughly ignored them up to date. There was some loose connection with Arkin at some point, and I decided to not mess with Arkin because the consistency just wasn't there. But then, I'm pretty friendly with Doug from Cameraland. He's a good dude. He's not a shooter, but he's been around the optics room for a long time. And Doug cares deeply about customer support, all right? Because if his customers are not supported, well, he gets yelled at, right? So there's a certain element of self-preservation with Doug caring about customer support. And when the whole DNT thing came up, he started carrying it. And we have another mutual friend who sells them in Canada. I chatted with him as well, and he basically went, "Look, customer support is just excellent, and I really don't see these come back a whole lot." So I figured I should go take a look. So I went and took a look, and this ain't Arkin. The optical system looked like a finished design, mechanical, everything looked good. The feel was pretty good. Equally importantly, they did not make any outlandish claims. There wasn't any of the crap about if you have this scope, you don't need a Schmidt and Bender. They didn't pretend to be Schmidt. They didn't pretend to be Tangent. Um, I don't know. They basically said, we believe we have the best product for the money, but we're not idiots. We know that if you're paying $5,000, you'll get a better scope, right? So, and I found that kind of honesty absolutely refreshing. They're proud of what they make. It looks pretty mature, and I think they will do well with it. Honestly, I'll be taking a look at one. They got my curiosity, and I looked a little bit. So they've got it is a Chinese company. They have a growing facility near Houston with quite a few employees. The few people who have told me who have needed to use customer support said when you call the 1-800 number, you actually have a human pick up the phone. So it's looking promising, right? So you can make your own decisions on whether you want to work with when you want to be using an optic that's made in China. I'm not going to make the decision for you. My job is to evaluate the product and tell you what I think. So I'm going to do exactly that with DNT. I have a lot more confidence in them than I ever did in Arkin. I see there are a couple of questions. I'll get to that in a moment. Just to finish this story with DNT, they had several budget hunting scopes, 2 to 12 and 3 to 18. That's in a $200, $250 range that I thought were punching well above their weight class. They have those Zulus digital night vision scopes. Looked okay. I didn't look at them very hard. What really got my attention was the fused scopes that have stuff like this. Sorry, I apologize. The picture is a little bit dark. I'll need to process it. Excuse me. That has everything in one. And usually when you have everything in one, okay, excuse me. I'm gonna... Usually when you have everything in one, that means nothing works. And here the integration was pretty good. significantly better than I expected it to be, and the eyepiece was good. The menu system looked reasonable. Outside controls looked reasonable. Okay, I've got somebody to door. Give me a sec. I'll be right. Okay, I have to apologize. One of my son's friends decided to run over, and we'll see. So, okay. Children. My son is trying to avoid doing his geometry homework, so I'm going to print it out for him, and then I'm going to continue. So to talk about Arkin in the meantime, not Arkin, DNT in the meantime, I got the whole shtick on the background of the company. I am not going to rehash any of the dirty laundry. I don't think that's important. The important part is that I am sort of encouraged by where they're going, and I will be looking at the product and seeing if I can make sense of it. But it's been looking pretty good. Okay. Let's see what we have in the comments, and I will continue. Alpine, where's Telson in the mix optically? So the Japanese stuff is pretty good for the money, I think. It will compete well with the $2,000 scopes. The primary competitors are probably Burris XTR Pro and stuff like that, and I think it's going to be a fight. Which one is better? I don't know. I'll take a look when I have the 5 to 32. 3 to 18 is in the $1,500 range, something like that. So it's gonna go head to head against stuff like Leopold Mark IV. At first blush, it should be very competitive there, but how well it's gonna do again. I just got my hands on the production version, so I'll take a look. Benjamin Belkin. Is the FFP Credo 2 to 10 by 36 worth a demo? I can get one below map from a distributor. I like the Credo 2 to 10, but I just told my son to not go anywhere until homework is done, and he vanished. Okay, we're gonna have a discussion about that. Children. What was I? Yeah. So the basic problem with that one is that look at it carefully if you have a chance. I like the scope, it is quite nice. I thought the reticle on low power was too thin. Aside from that, I thought it was a very capable design. Mr. Beardo goes, one Chinese company had a large carbon fiber inverted leg tripod with ball mount that they said was going to sell for 200. That's interesting. I hope it works well. With tripod, smoothness and of controls counts for a lot. It'll be interesting to see what they can do for $200. And Jared is saying video by the Firearm Blog TV Showtime. So, Jared, is there something in that video that I need to see, or just curious? So, what this is referring to? Okay, going back to my notes, we've talked about Gideon, Telson, DNT, Athlon. So let's talk a little bit about Athlon. We've talked about Envision. Hold on, I've talked about Leica. see. I've talked about Schmidt in the previous stream. Talked about Bushnell. Talked about Tract, I think. It's all sorts of illustrations. Bloody hell. I started sneezing all of a sudden. Okay. Let's talk about that one. So I talked about that, I think, while trying to drive. That went to locals only, but not to YouTube. So there is a new chronograph. There's a new chronograph. Looks a little bit like same size as Garmin Zero, except it's $350. User control looked pretty good, and that might do some damage. They've revamped a bunch of their product lines. The thermals got improved. They're looking pretty nice. Some of them have much nicer user interface, much more intuitive than a million buttons. They're adding laser rangefinder to the thermal rifle scopes. They have clip-ons now, and image quality actually looked quite good. So Athlon is going into thermals in a significant way, I think. The conventional scopes got updated as well. Ares, ETR, BTR, Midas, Stack, Argos all went up by generation. The prices did not change, which is commendable. Image quality seems to have gone up a little bit. I've spent the most time with the Ares ETR Gen 2, the 4.5 to 30 by 56. I thought it had nice clicks. And I thought it had slightly improved reticle. Optical, it looked very nice. For a long while now, Ares ETR was arguably easily one of the better Chinese-made scopes out there, and the Gen 2 of that is interesting. Whether I'll have time to look at it in the immediate future is hard to say offhand, but when they're available, I'll take a look. The product with Athlon that I'm curious about the most is the chronograph. $350 for a chronograph is pretty good. So, see. Apparently, my brother who went to SHOT Show with me is getting sick and wondering if I am doing okay. He has just had 2 COVID tests today and yesterday, both negative. Okay. We'll see. I'm blowing my nose, but not too much. We'll see how it goes from here. Sick of health. I have to get on a plane Tuesday morning, so that's going to be interesting. All right. Where was I? Athlon, yeah. Athlon is an interesting company. They don't seem to be doing a huge amount of marketing, but they are a distribution juggernaut. So they are really good at getting their products out there. So they do a very good job with that. Mr. Alpine, here any rumblings of weapon-mounted LRFs on the horizon? So there are rumblings. There are a few people I know working on it that are in a prototype stage. The one that was shown at SHOT Show was the one by Mastech. They are doing these things in partnerships with Magpul, so it will probably be distributed by Magpul for them. They have the X4 heads-up display thing. Let me see if I can find a picture where you can make any any LPVO smarter by putting it in a chassis, so you can project an image into it and all that. And why do I not see it? I thought I took a ton of pictures. Somehow I do not see them. They might still be in the camera. I will see. I may not have imported these pictures yet. So Mastech has a new weapon-mounted laser rangefinder that looked to be relatively light and slim. It's definitely smaller than the Impact 4000 that have quite a lot of mileage with. There is a wired external control, and it talks wirelessly to the X4 smart heads-up display that they use. There will be two versions of the weapons-mounted laser rangefinder. One is going to be use a conventional 905 nanometer laser and work um, in 95 nanometer laser will cost about 2 grand, and it seems to be a good bit slimmer than the Impact. I don't think it's going to range as far, but at least 2000. And then they're going to have, it's in the same size. They have another version using a 1550 laser, which can be pushed with more energy. And that one will cost, I think, about $4,500, something like that. And 1530 laser, weapon mounted, under 5K is kind of a big deal, right? So that should make a lot of people concerned. So Jared is asking about Infotech Fast Mini Thermal. Let me make sure it's one thing. I think it was a small thermal that they were putting in stuff where that does not have a it was without an eyepiece, right? That's where you're looking straight at the display on the back, right? I think that was it. Yeah. Let me find a picture, make sure I'm not confusing it, because there's a bunch of these. A bunch of people make these. It's a blatantly idiotic idea, but for some reason, because it's cheap, they keep on thinking that they'll be able to bamboozle some unsuspecting people into buying this crap. Yeah, there it is. I see it. Yeah, it's a tiny little thermal, roughly the size of an enclosed red dot sight. Camera on the front, and there is a screen on the back without an eyepiece, so tiny little screen. It is. Uh, I did not see the video. I saw several different versions of these, packaged differently. It's not a good idea. It's not a good idea for a weapon sight. There is a reason all these things have an eyepiece, so that you wouldn't have to have reading glasses to look at it. The way rifle scopes work, the reason why they have eyepieces is that the eyepiece projects an image to your eye, and to your eye, it looks like the image is fairly far away. So if you are looking through a rifle scope, if you look away, you're still focused far away, right? If you put just a display in the back, that's one of the problems with, one of the problems we have when we're looking at cell phones all the time. When you're staring at cell phone screen, how's your situation awareness? It's completely gone to shit. So the way we are wired, if we are focused on something very close to us, we completely lose awareness of everything else that's happening. So that's exactly what's going to happen with a site like that, right? Your awareness of the environment and the target and all that is going to go to shit. If you see a thermal or digital, whatever optic, where in the back of it is just a display, and you're looking like straight at the display, that's a patently idiotic idea. Don't fall for it. It sounds cool when you're just looking at it. It's not a good idea. Companies keep on doing it because they've got video game people developing it and hoping other people who play video games and don't shoot guns will buy them. Apparently, it's successful since they keep doing it. It's not a serious approach to weapon sights. Okay, moving right along. What else do I have there? That's all about Athlon. Shield sites was interesting. It's a company I happen to like. Guys, can you give me one sec? All right, I'm with you. So Shield sites, interesting company. They've been doing red dot sites, longer than most. Are they a new product for the show? What's the site they call AMSX? And I was so convinced that I had a picture of it. And I have some. That's not it. That's Athlon. There we go. I do have a picture. So let's show you that. So it's a tiny carbon optic. This is what it looks like from the side. It's part of the AMS line. This particular one, the version has a battery up top. It can work on 2032, 2050, or 6032 batteries. The controls are on the left. The window is relatively wide and as a very compact red dot sight, it should actually work pretty nicely. That's the view of the battery compartment. Okay. And you can roughly see, so it's sitting on an AR clone, you can see the width of the sight. So it's like a bit over an inch, 30 millimeters, something like that wide, maybe 26 millimeters, somewhere there. There's a very, very clever mounting system that I think they patented, which gives it very, very low deck height. I don't know if it's intended to go on handguns. I'm sure somebody will put one on. I think there's a way of doing it, but it is really at its best on some very lightweight carbines, where you will have very good speed. Collimation quality looked very good. It is an enclosed sight, so it should be well protected from the elements. And uh, Shield has a good history of small enclosed weapon sights, starting with the SIS and CQB6, CQT. I have the Gen 1 SIS that I like, that I've had for quite a few years. This looks to be a meaningful improvement over that. Okay. Also from Shield, they had a couple of smaller red dot sights. They've been experimenting with different window shapes. This is the one. Once again, this is a very dark image. I'll clean it up and post some images later. This is a site they call RMSC. Notice that it is how narrow this is. It's actually slightly narrower than the narrow slide of a Glock 43X. And the shape of the window, rather than this sideways letter D, like they always use, it's a little bit more squarish. And what they're finding is that some people prefer this window shape because because the symmetric, it's a little bit easier for them to center the dot in it. I have not really had any issues with the original shape, but this side looked good and looked quite nice and quick and easy to use. Weighed nothing. The same basic footprint. Um, I thought it looked pretty nice, and again, tiny and very, very light. It's called RMS SC. So RMSC is compact. SC, I assume, is super compact or something like that. Maybe. The other interesting optic I thought was this guy. It's not yet in production. They made basically an RMS type optic where the top of the housing is clear plastic of some sort. And when you look through it, the dot looks better, sharper, and all that. The dot itself, the emitter, etc., obviously did not change. But with this clear plastic on top, seems to offer an improvement of some sort. And I was sitting there thinking about it. If I think about how a human eye works, it's not unreasonable to see this kind of an effect. There is this thing you can do. I think the best example is probably what you can do. You can do it with your TV, right? Many years ago, well, quite a few years ago, I was at a broadcast show. I used to work for a company that worked on image sensors, and we built some broadcast movie cameras and stuff like that, or pieces for it. So sometimes both. So I used to go to this show called IBC International Broadcast Conference, something like that, in Amsterdam every year. And one year there was a company there making new laser-based movie projectors for movie theaters, and it was the first time it was shown. So they let us into the movie theater. They took away all our cell phones, etc., so that we would not be able to take pictures. It was all super hush hush. Locked the doors, turned down the light to the point where there was absolutely pitch black, like you couldn't see if you put your hand like this, you wouldn't be able to see it. It was super pitch black. It showed us that movie. The movie was the one of the Jungle Book movies, but the image quality was absolutely stunning. And the big thing about those new movie projectors was that the contrast they were able to show you was absolutely unbelievable. The dynamic range of those things from bright to dark was just absolutely stunning. I don't think I've ever seen since or before. It's been some years now. I don't think I've seen image quality this good, with the dark colors being so rich and the light colors being so bright and all that sort of stuff. Most of the TVs we have are not quite as good as that. So there is an interesting thing. If you turn off all of the lights in your room and you try to watch a movie on your TV, no matter how nice of a TV, although it's less of a problem with the very fancy ones, you will notice that the black colors in the image are not exactly the solid, rich, saturated black that you expect. Right? There's a little bit in it, like more structured than you think, etc. Uh, i- if you take like some sort of a fairly faint LED strip and you simply attach it to the back of the TV, so it's not on line of sight, but it just backlights your TV a little bit. The same movie played on that TV will look to your eye as if it has better contrast. The blacks are blacker, the whites are whiter, etc. The way our eyes and our brains work, we continually process the image, and we continually process the image and we adjust our perception of contrast, our perception of the dynamic range based on some additional light that is immediately that is ambient in the immediate vicinity of what we're looking at. So as I was looking at that shield, new RMS with a clear plastic housing on top, I couldn't help but notice that we might be seeing the same effect, because the way the dot is projected did not change very much, but the way I perceived it, because there was no thick black line above it because it was a clear plastic housing, the way I perceived it, the dot looked sharper and better to me. It's kind of an interesting thing. I'm gonna try to get my hands on this thing and play with it. I think it's an interesting idea, and if it truly results in a measurable improvement in how we perceive it, it's a good thing. So, where was I? Yeah. So that's that. For Shield, their AMS and AMS-C red dot sights are now in full production, and I'm going to look to get my hands on one of them. I wanted to swap out the sight on my carry gun anyway, so this is a good opportunity to test one. If you guys have a preference whether I should be looking at AMS or AMS-C, I'm open to suggestions. I don't think for my carry gun it makes a big amount of difference between those two, but if you're more interested in one versus the other, I'll be happy to see what I want to take a look at. Okay. Before I move on, next on my list is Boris. Any questions? Anything else you want me to touch on? Anything come that you can think of that I haven't covered yet? We are at about an hour and a half, so in about 15, 20 minutes, I want to wrap up. I have other things to do, so if there is anything else you want me to touch on, now's the time. And as I said, I am going to try to do another live stream tomorrow, talk about Neural Hunter and catch any remaining questions based on the shot 2025 videos. So give me a second to blow my nose again, and then if there are no questions, I'm going to move on and talk about berries. All right, I'm back. I don't see any questions, so let's talk about berries. You know what? Let me see. If anybody decided to put any questions into the comments where I told them to not put it. No, so far so good. On YouTube, so far so good. Okay. Rumble, we are good. I'm always a little bit concerned with all this high-tech stuff failing on me. And finally, Facebook, where I put up the link. Okay. I think we're good. Okay. Let us talk about Berry Celtics. So, as most of you know, I know the guys at Burris relatively well. It just so happens I don't really know the guys who do sales and marketing very much. I do know the people who do product development and engineering. And they usually have pretty interesting ideas. One of the more interesting ones that they've been developing step by step over the last few years is this business with a clickless elevation turret, something they call PEC, programmable elevation control, something like that. They call it PEK, which I think it just misspells control, but whatever. Marketing. They've had it on Signature PH for a little bit. They've been dealing with some overhead display in the Steiner IFS, Burson Steiner related companies. They're both owned by Beretta. And now for this year, they finally got this heads-up display business into their tactical precision scopes, the XTR model. So the new one is called XTR-PS. There are two models. The bigger one that's on the gun is the 5.5 to 30 by 56, and a smaller one is 3.3 to 18 by 50. If that sounds familiar, that's because we're basically talking about XTR3i with some additional features. And arguably the most important additional feature here is this clickless turret. The encoder in it allows you to make adjustments down to about 1/30th of a mil. I'm not sure I care too much about that. That greatly exceeds my ability to shoot. And the heads-up display inside tells you exactly what you've dialed, and you can have it shown in milliradian, or you can have it shown in distance. And the way it can show it to you in distance is through a very large table of ballistic data that it loads up from the phone app. It does not have any sensors in it, so the way it works, it basically loads up this huge lookup table, and then when you're shooting, you get your density altitude from nearby airport, from your Kestrel, from wherever. There are a couple of buttons on the side over there where the parallax turret would normally be. You dial in your density altitude, and you're off to the races. Another clever thing they've got in there in the display, and remember with different firmware you can do. Uh, okay, this is what was it? Yeah, this is not a good. My remote software people just asked me if this is a good time for me to reboot my computer because they're doing some sort of updates. So I had to tell them, no, this is not a good time to remotely reboot my computer in the middle of a freaking live stream. So with burst XTRs, they're called XTR-PS. One other interesting thing they did is your heads-up display has a timer. So, for example, for something like a narrow hunter match, you can set it for 4 minutes, right? And one press of a button starts the timer. And then as you shoot, you know exactly how much time you have left without looking at anything else, just looking through it in the scope. Whether it would help me or not is an open question. Some people probably get more nervous looking at that than others. But in the grand scheme of things, I think that anything that allows you to stay on the scope rather than look away is a good thing. The reticles are, the same normal SCR2 mil reticles, which I like, and the heads-up display I think is a meaningful step forward for rifle scope technology. I think that's a good way to go. I will get my hands on the 5.5 to 30 as soon as one is available and put it through its paces. It'll be very interesting to see if it allows me to streamline the way I shoot a little bit or not. I don't know. Hard to say. Since I'm kind of practicing and getting better and more efficient in parallel, it's going to be interesting to see whether it's helping me, or not. Also new from Burris is the enclosed red dot called Fastfire E. Look pretty nice. Top mounted emitter, optical look good. And they have completely reworked their full field product lines. In the past they had full field 2 and full field 4 and drop time, which is the same basic thing and all that. So they're basically revamping that whole thing. Now they're just called full field. And there is a 2 to 8 by 32, 2.5 to 10 by 42, 3 to 12 by 42, 3 to 12 by 56, should be good for low light, 4 to 16 by 50, and I think 6 to 24 by 50, I think. But basically all of these are in the $180 to about $350 price range. They're made in the Philippines. Fastfire 4 was China. Now they pulled the full field 4 was China. Now they pulled the full field line back to the Philippines. And honestly, they looked quite good, unless I'm mistaken. The optical systems look to be redesigned. These do not really look very much like previous generation full fields to me. But again, I saw the prototypes at shot. So we'll see. I'm kind of cautiously optimistic. There are a couple illuminated models. High-powered ones have side focus. The 3 to 12 by 56, there are two models. One with the German number 4 and illuminated dot. Another one is non-illuminated, but with a very thick, bold duplex, which we've been kind of asking for a while. I kind of like what I see. I think these should do rather nicely for them. And on the Steiner side of things, so there were a couple of new things they showed me that I can't talk about yet. But their version of a heads-up display scope, the new one is called the E-Predator, and that's a 3 to 24 by 50 model only. And the different thing about this one is that it remotely communicates with their Bluetooth-enabled LRF binocular called the Predator. And so you can range something and the information pops up in your scope. You have that same type of clickless turret, although that one I think was MOA. And you can dial to match what your laser rangefinder measured. Mr. Salty Larry goes a third of a tenth of a meal will be 1/8 of an MOA, right? Not a bad thing on small targets. I think it's less than 1/8 of an MOA. I will tell you right now. I had this rather than convert this. Give me one sec. Let's see. So yeah, right around 1/8, a little bit under 1/8 of a minute of work. Correct. I don't think they are aiming. I don't think they're aiming very much at the small target stuff, as much as that's what the digital encoder does. This is a situation where the idea is that it just simplifies dialing elevation, and you can do so completely blindly without having to rely on clicks and anything like that. That's the basic idea. With a high magnification scope for paper shooters or people who want to shoot something truly tiny, it will also be an advantage, but I don't think that was their primary purpose. Mr. Benjamin Belkin. Ever shoot a 6.5 Grendel of 6 arc? Yes, I have both. I'm looking for something energy-wise between 56 and 6.5 Creed. I shoot in Arizona at steel from 250 to 1,000 yards. And the soft performance from 77 grain past 500 yards is evident. So I have both. I have a lot of mileage with 6.5 Grendel, and less so, but still a fair amount with 6 arc. They will both work, and they will both be more authoritative on the plates than 556. If you're shooting plates, 6 arc is probably a better way to go. Because at longer distances, as you're getting, you're saying up to 1,000 yards, as you're getting to about 1,000 yards in many places, 6 arc will still be fairly reliably supersonic, while 6.5 Grendel, depending on which altitude you're at, may sort of start kind of petering out a little bit. I live in New Mexico, so I shoot about 6,000 foot elevation, roughly. So here, 6.5 Grendel makes it 2,000 in relative comfort. But for hunting for hunting, I'd lean towards 6.5 Grendel, bigger bullet, not and all that. For shooting plates, I would consider 6 arc to be a better option, and it kind of also helps that it's new. Hornady has the control of the reamers, and a factory 6 arc ammo to me looks quite good. Jared, unless he's changed, 6.5 Grendel is Ilya's favorite AR round, but I'd be interested in whether he has any experience with 6 arc. So as I've just been saying, yes, I have with both. It kind of depends on what you want to do. If hunting is part of the equation, I'd still stick with the 6.5 Grendel as a general purpose AR-15 round. It's very hard to beat. Although, to be fair, sometimes this year I'm going to get the boombox from Q in 8.6. Again, it's not a long-range number. But as far as flexibility of use goes, 8.6 blackout is kind of hard to beat. Benjamin Belkin, 1,100 feet here. Okay, so you're toward the south of Arizona. Yeah, if you're shooting at 1,000 yards at 1,100 foot altitude, I think 6 arc is going to be a better choice for you. The bullets are a little bit slicker. Hornady keeps good control of it. Factory ammo is accurate, so I'd probably lean toward that. So, all right, hour and 40 minutes. So let's plan to be wrapping up. If there are any remaining questions, I'll take a couple, and then we'll see if we can talk about Neural Hunter and tie up some loose ends tomorrow evening. Mr. Benjamin Wilkin. I saw AEC is loading 6.5 Grendel for 75 cents per round, which is attractive. It is. It is quite attractive, but one of the problems with Grendel is that there's a lot of different reamers out there. So you kind of have to test ammo and see what works well and what works and what doesn't. So if AC ammo works well in your gun, it's a very reliable option. But again, at 1,000 yards, at a relatively low altitude, Grendel might not be ideal. While 6-ARC gives you a bit more margin. Mr. Wolford, 6mm arc makes sense too, now that Magpul is making 6mm specific mags now. Yeah, I haven't tested those mags yet. I plan to, but for what I heard, those same magazines work with 6.5 Grendel just as well. I think. Again, I'm gonna get my hands on those mags and experiment. Honestly, I have not really had a whole lot of feeding issues. It used to be a serious problem with the Grendel, but it seems like it's been resolved for quite a long time now. I have some magazines that are labeled 6-ARC. I have some magazines that are labeled 6.5 Grendel, and I have not had a ton of feeding issues with either. I will say that most of my experience with these, with the 6-ARC, has been with 10-round magazines. Because I've been doing a lot of prone shooting and I don't want the magazine sticks out too much. With the Grendel, I've had all types from 10-round magazines to 20 plus, and more recent magazines seems to work well. Mr. Belkin, yep, and Phoenix, yes. So yeah, Phoenix makes sense. Yeah, honestly, I just would not, I would not try. If you are truly shooting 1,000 yards with this thing, I would not try to reinvent the wheel and still with a 6-ARC. Mr. Saltillary, thanks for the talk. Absolutely, you're welcome, guys. So I think we're going to wrap up now. I need to go and make sure my son actually does his geometry homework. And I'll look over my notes and pictures and see if I've missed anything significant. So this is the part 2 of the SHOT Show overview. If you are late to the party, please take a look at part 1, part 2, and I'll try to do a live stream tomorrow to talk about Neural Hunter. And if you have questions, that will be the time to address them. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you need to get a hold of me, my website at darklordofoptics.com is the best way to get my attention. Thank you all.